Back in September, the White House put pressure on Trump's handpicked U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia that he had to bring charges against former FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Tish James. Trump's U.S. attorney in Virginia quit in response to that pressure.
Someone just quit on Donald Trump. And I don't mean resigned gracefully after accomplishing their mission. I mean got absolutely humiliated by federal judges and forced out of their position in the most embarrassing way possible. Lindseay Halligan, Trump's hand-picked prosecutor who was supposed to be going after his enemies, just had to leave her job because courts literally threatened to sanction anyone who kept calling her a U.S. attorney. Think about that for a second. A federal judge said, if you refer to this person by her official title, we will discipline you. That's how illegitimate her appointment was. That's how thoroughly she failed at everything Trump wanted her to do. And this isn't just one person leaving one job. This is proof that Trump's entire strategy of installing loyalists who will break laws for him is falling apart. Because Halligan did exactly what Trump wanted. Brought bogus charges against James Comey and Tish James. Tried prosecuting Trump's enemies even though there was no evidence. And she got destroyed by courts for it. Lost every case. Got her appointment ruled illegal. Got threatened with sanctions. And finally had to quit in disgrace. Before we break down exactly what happened and why this matters so much, we're giving you the real analysis without corporate spin. That's the pattern we're seeing across Trump's administration now. Loyalists who thought they were untouchable discovering there are actual consequences for breaking laws and defying judges. And those consequences are forcing them out. Here's what actually happened with Halligan, because the details show you exactly how Trump operates and why it keeps backfiring. Trump wanted federal prosecutors to go after James Comey and Letitia James. Wanted them charged with crimes. Didn't matter that there was no evidence. Didn't matter that these would be obvious political prosecutions. Trump wanted revenge and expected his Justice Department to deliver. But the U.S. Attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia, someone Trump himself had appointed, refused to bring the charges. Looked at what Trump was demanding and said, this is prosecutorial misconduct. This is using federal law enforcement to settle personal scores. I won't do it. And that U.S. attorney quit rather than participate in Trump's revenge scheme. So Trump needed a replacement, needed someone who would actually prosecute Comey and James even though the cases had no merit. And he picked Lindseay Halligan, a White House aide who had never prosecuted a case in her life. Zero experience as a prosecutor. But she looked the part, blonde, willing to say whatever Trump wanted on Fox News, completely loyal. That's all that mattered to Trump. And Halligan did what she was installed to do. Brought charges against Comey and Tish James. Announced the indictments like they were major victories. Went on television talking about holding Trump's enemies accountable. For about 5 minutes, it looked like Trump's strategy was working. His loyalist prosecutor was actually going after the people he hated. Then reality hit. A federal judge looked at the charges Halligan brought and dismissed them immediately. Said there was no legal basis for the prosecution. Said Halligan had been illegally appointed because she didn't go through proper confirmation process. Said she wasn't actually the U.S. Attorney for Eastern District of Virginia no matter what title she was using. That ruling destroyed Halligan's entire position. Because if you're not legally the U.S. Attorney, you can't prosecute cases, can't make legal filings, can't represent the government in court. Everything you've done becomes invalid. And the judge didn't stop there. Started asking why Halligan was still calling herself U.S. Attorney when she legally wasn't. Started threatening sanctions against any lawyer who continued using that false title. Think about how humiliating that is. A federal judge publicly calling you out for pretending to have a job you don't legally hold, threatening to discipline you for lying about your position. That's not normal legal pushback. That's a judge saying you're engaged in misconduct and there will be consequences. But Halligan tried to keep going, tried to appeal the dismissal of her cases, tried to resurrect the prosecutions against Comey and James, and the Justice Department under Pam Bondi backed her up. Filed appeals defending Halligan's appointment, argued she should be allowed to continue as U.S. Attorney, pushed to keep the political prosecutions alive. That's when another federal judge stepped in. Different case, different judge, same conclusion. Halligan is not legally the U.S. Attorney, and this judge went further, ordered Halligan to explain by a specific deadline why she was still identifying herself as U.S. Attorney when that was false. Said continuing to use that title could constitute misconduct, could be grounds for formal discipline. Now Halligan had 2 federal judges publicly calling her illegitimate, 2 judges threatening sanctions, 2 judges saying her appointment violated law, and the deadline for her to explain herself was approaching. She either had to admit she was lying about her position or face formal discipline for misconduct. That's when she quit. Announced she was leaving her position. Pam Bondi released a statement saying Halligan was departing, and just like that, Trump's hand-picked prosecutor who was supposed to destroy his enemies was gone, forced out by judges who refused to let her corrupt the legal system. Now let me explain why this matters so much beyond just one person leaving one job, because Halligan's failure exposes the fundamental flaw in Trump's entire strategy. He thinks he can just install loyalists in positions of power, and they'll do whatever he wants, regardless of law. Thinks loyalty is all that matters. Thinks if someone is willing to break rules for him, they'll succeed. But Halligan proves that doesn't work. Because courts still exist, judges still have authority. And when Trump's loyalists try to abuse their positions in ways that are blatantly illegal, judges can stop them, can rule their appointments invalid, can threaten sanctions, can create enough pressure that the loyalists have to quit. And that's exactly what happened here. Halligan was completely loyal to Trump, willing to bring bogus prosecutions, willing to ignore ethics rules, willing to pretend she had authority she didn't legally possess. But none of that loyalty protected her from judges who said, "This is illegal and we're not allowing it." Share this video with everyone you know because the same pattern is playing out across Trump's administration. Kristi Noem defying court orders about ICE enforcement until judges started threatening her personally. Pam Bondi slow-walking Epstein file releases until Congress threatened contempt. Kash Patel purging the FBI until lawsuits started piling up with his own admissions as evidence. All these loyalists discovering that breaking laws catches up with you even when the president wants you to do it. And Halligan's resignation creates a blueprint for how to force others out. Apply pressure through courts, document the illegal conduct, threaten personal sanctions, make staying in the job more costly than quitting. That worked on Halligan, and it can work on other Trump officials who are violating laws. The political implications are massive too, because Trump sold his supporters on the idea that he would lock up his enemies, promised Comey would go to jail, promised Tish James would be prosecuted, promised accountability for everyone who investigated him. And Halligan was supposed to deliver on those promises, was supposed to be the prosecutor who finally made it happen. But she failed completely. Couldn't keep the charges alive, couldn't even keep her own appointment valid, had to quit in disgrace without accomplishing anything Trump wanted. That's embarrassing for Trump, makes him look weak, makes his promises look empty, shows his supporters that all the tough talk about prosecuting enemies is just talk. And Republicans are starting to notice, starting to realize that Trump's strategy of appointing unqualified loyalists doesn't actually work, that these people fail at accomplishing basic tasks because they have no idea what they're doing. Halligan never prosecuted a case before Trump appointed her. How was she supposed to successfully prosecute complex political cases against experienced lawyers? She couldn't, and her failure was inevitable. Now here's what makes Halligan's departure even more significant. She wasn't just some random appointee, she was central to Trump's revenge agenda, was supposed to be the person who would use federal prosecutorial power to destroy Trump's enemies. That was her entire purpose. And she failed so spectacularly that she had to quit. What does that say about Trump's ability to weaponize the Justice Department? If he can't even keep his hand-picked revenge prosecutor in place for more than a few months, how is he supposed to maintain control of DOJ for 4 years? How is he supposed to prevent investigations into his own conduct? How is he supposed to use federal law enforcement as his personal protection racket? The answer is he can't, at least not as easily as he thought, because courts are pushing back, judges are enforcing law, and Trump's loyalists are discovering that judicial authority still matters. Can't just ignore it. Can't just do whatever Trump wants and expect no consequences. And Halligan's failure creates pressure on everyone else in Trump's circle, because if she had to quit, who's next? Pam Bondi is facing contempt threats over Epstein files. Todd Blanche has massive conflicts of interest. Kash Patel is being sued by fired FBI agents with his own admissions as evidence. All of them are doing things that violate law. All of them are vulnerable to the same kind of pressure that forced Halligan out. Democrats need to understand this and capitalize on it. Need to keep applying pressure through courts. Keep documenting the illegal conduct. Keep threatening sanctions against individual officials who break laws. Because that pressure works. Halligan proved it. She quit because judges made staying too costly. Make sure you subscribe because same strategy can work on others. Go after the lower level people first. The deputies and assistants who are carrying out illegal orders. Threaten them with personal liability, with sanctions, with prosecution once they lose their government positions. Make them understand they're absorbing legal risk for Trump while Trump himself stays protected by presidential immunity. That creates fear, creates hesitation, creates situations where Trump's orders don't get carried out because the people who would implement them are worried about consequences. And that slows everything down, makes it harder for Trump to accomplish his authoritarian agenda, buys time until midterms when Democrats might win back Congress and start real oversight. The midterm polling is already showing this strategy is working. Republican enthusiasm is cratering, down to 50% saying they're extremely motivated to vote. Meanwhile, Democratic enthusiasm is up to 66%. That's a massive enthusiasm gap. That's the foundation for wave elections where Democrats win huge majorities. And why is Republican enthusiasm down? Because Trump isn't delivering on his promises. He promised to lock up Comey, and instead his prosecutor had to quit. He promised to drain the swamp, and instead he installed the most corrupt administration in history. He promised strength, and instead he's getting humiliated by courts and foreign leaders. His supporters are watching this and getting demoralized. Now let me address what Halligan actually represents beyond just this one resignation, because she's a perfect example of who Trump picks for important positions. Someone with no qualifications, no experience, no expertise, just loyalty and willingness to do whatever Trump wants. Halligan defended slavery in schools, actually went on television and talked about how teaching slavery is indoctrination. That's the kind of person Trump thought should be a federal prosecutor. Someone who thinks acknowledging historical facts about slavery is inappropriate for classrooms. That tells you everything about Trump's judgment and priorities. He doesn't care about competence, doesn't care about ethics, doesn't care about legal knowledge or prosecutorial experience, just cares about loyalty, about finding people who will say and do whatever he wants. And that's why his administration keeps failing, because loyalty without competence is useless. Can't accomplish complex legal tasks just by being willing to break rules. Halligan tried. She brought the charges Trump wanted, but she had no idea how to actually prosecute them, had no experience with the procedural requirements, didn't understand how to defend her appointment when challenged, couldn't navigate the legal system well enough to keep her cases alive, so everything fell apart. And that's happening throughout Trump's government. Loyalists getting installed in positions they're not qualified for, failing at basic tasks, creating crises that damage Trump politically. Kristi Noem running Homeland Security but unable to stop courts from blocking ICE operations. Pete Hegseth running defense but creating scandals about Pentagon competence. Kash Patel running FBI but destroying morale and institutional knowledge. All of them loyal. All of them willing to do whatever Trump wants. None of them actually good at their jobs. And Trump's presidency is suffering because of it. Can't accomplish policy goals when your appointees are incompetent. Can't maintain control when your loyalists keep failing and having to quit. The pressure campaign that forced Halligan out needs to expand to everyone else doing illegal things for Trump. And there are a lot of targets. Every official defying court orders. Every prosecutor bringing politically motivated cases. Every agency head slow-walking transparency requirements. All of them are vulnerable to the same judicial pressure that worked on Halligan. Courts can threaten sanctions, can rule appointments illegal, can find officials in contempt, can create enough legal jeopardy that staying in position becomes untenable. And if Democrats and advocacy groups coordinate that pressure, target officials systematically, document violations, file lawsuits, they can force more resignations. Think about what happens if Pam Bondi faces the same fate as Halligan. If courts rule her actions violate law, if sanctions get imposed, if the pressure becomes too much and she has to quit. Trump loses his attorney general, loses control of Justice Department, loses his main tool for protecting himself and attacking enemies. Or if Kash Patel gets forced out of FBI, if the lawsuits from fired agents succeed, if courts rule his purge violated civil service protections, if he faces personal liability for knowingly breaking law, Trump loses his loyalist running the bureau, loses ability to use FBI for political purposes, loses another key piece of his authoritarian infrastructure. Each resignation weakens Trump. Each official forced out reduces his power. Each failure makes his promises look hollow. And the accumulation creates momentum toward comprehensive collapse, where his entire administration becomes unsustainable. That's why Halligan's resignation matters so much. It's not just one person leaving, it's proof that Trump's strategy can be defeated, that loyalists can be forced out, that pressure works, that courts still have authority, that consequences still exist for breaking laws. And Republicans are watching this too, seeing Trump's appointees fail and quit in disgrace, seeing his promises go unfulfilled, seeing his administration stumble from crisis to crisis, and they're getting worried about their own political futures, about whether association with Trump helps or hurts them, about whether defending his failed loyalists costs them with voters. That creates space for Republicans to break with Trump, to distance themselves from his worst appointees, to refuse defending the indefensible. We saw it with Halligan. Some Republicans quietly celebrated her departure even though she was supposedly on their team, because her failures made them all look bad. Same thing will happen with other Trump officials as they fail and quit. Republicans will find ways to separate themselves, to say those were Trump's choices, not ours, to position themselves as reasonable people who got stuck with a president who appointed terrible people. That fracturing of Republican unity accelerates Trump's collapse. The bottom line is this: Lindseay Halligan just quit as Trump's federal prosecutor after being completely humiliated by courts. 2 federal judges ruled her appointment illegal, threatened to sanction anyone calling her U.S. attorney, ordered her to explain why she was using false title, created so much pressure she had no choice but to resign. Her resignation proves Trump's strategy of installing unqualified loyalists doesn't work. Halligan had 0 prosecutorial experience, but got appointed because she was loyal and willing to bring bogus charges against Comey and Tish James. She failed completely, lost every case, got her appointment ruled invalid, had to quit in disgrace without accomplishing anything Trump wanted. This creates blueprint for forcing out other Trump officials. Apply pressure through courts, document illegal conduct, threaten personal sanctions, make staying more costly than quitting. Same strategy that worked on Halligan can work on Bondi, Patel, Noam, others violating laws. Republican enthusiasm cratering to 50% while Democratic enthusiasm jumps to 66%. Massive gap that creates foundation for wave elections. Voters watching Trump's appointees fail and quit, watching his promises go unfulfilled, getting demoralized about supporting him. Democrats need to expand pressure campaign, target every official defying courts, every prosecutor bringing political cases, every agency head slow-walking transparency, file lawsuits, threaten sanctions, document violations, force resignations systematically. Each official forced out weakens Trump, reduces his power, makes promises look hollow, creates momentum toward comprehensive collapse where entire administration becomes unsustainable. Halligan's resignation is just the beginning. More will follow if pressure continues. This story continues. Stay tuned.